Do you know what your city is doing to promote financial transparency? Stay tuned to CityWorks to find out. Hello everyone and welcome to CityWorks. I'm Valerie Starn. Today we're talking about financial transparency and what your city is doing to make itself more accessible. Joining me now is Bob Hall, City Manager of Fountain Valley. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you.
Let's start off with a tough question. What are the financial challenges your city is facing today?
Well, the City of Fountain Valley is really in a very difficult situation financially. We have currently a $1.7 million structural deficit. That's not something new. 7 of the last 9 years we've had deficit years. We're projecting by 2021 that we're going to have about a $4 million structural deficit. That's really caused by the state takeaways over the years. Since about 2002, the City of Fountain Valley has lost about $116 million in revenues that we had to be able to provide services in the past, and so that's a challenge for us.
When you say state takeaways, educate the residents. How did that happen? Why did the state come in and take money from not just your city, but cities throughout the state?
Right, we're not unique in this. This happened across California. The state needs money. They come to the cities and kind of have used them as ATMs over the years. That's why in recent years Measure 1A was in place, and also Prop 22 was recently put in place, so the state cannot come back and take sales tax, property tax, those types of things. One of the most recent takes was redevelopment, and the elimination of redevelopment has had a significant impact on agencies. A small city like Fountain Valley, our general fund budget is only about $42 million. A couple of years back, we had to write a check to the state of California for $46 million, so you can see how significant of a hit that was to us.
Let's go back in time a bit. The city, what were the financial resources the city had in the early days, and how have they changed over the years?
Sure. Fountain Valley is really a bedroom community for the most part. We have single-family residents. We don't have a lot of other type of residential units. So primarily, in the 70s and 80s when Fountain Valley was developed, everything was a 7,000 square foot lot, so the houses are very spacious, the lots are very spacious. There's not a lot of intense use. Property tax is our primary revenue source. We do get some sales tax. We have Costco, we have Sam's Club, and probably the next highest one is fuel as a group that we generate a lot of revenue from that.
And by fuel you mean?
Automobile fuel, people buying gas. One of the things that we do have is our streets in Fountain Valley are pretty well maintained because there's a lot of people that drive through Fountain Valley, not necessarily to Fountain Valley. And so as they're passing through, a number of people do buy fuel in town, and that does help us significantly. So
as the city hit tough economic times, what measures did you take to try to keep that balanced budget?
Sure. Well, over time, the city council and the city manager at the time took significant strides to try and reduce our costs. Number of employees, or the employees at that time, were asked to take budget or cuts in pay, reductions in benefits. We were one of the first cities that had we now have a 3-tier retirement system. Our employees actually have a lower retirement system than most, at least new employees coming into the organization. Classic members are very similar to what's there. We used to have 257 employees in 2002. We had 257 employees. Today we have 221 employees. So we've reduced staff. We've contracted out a number of things. Our building department is contracted out, building inspections, that type of thing. Typical things like street sweeping, tree trimming, landscaping, all of those things we've contracted out to try and reduce costs.
Over what time frame? How long ago, say, was the street sweeping contracted out? And also, you said also your building department, those services were contracted out. Right. What feedback have you had from your public? How is it working to have those contracted out, the savings that you've had? How's it working for you?
For the most part, it works pretty well on the simple or the kind of routine services like landscape maintenance and those types of things, street sweeping, things that are just kind of just doing the duties, it's not too bad. We've actually had pretty good luck with our building department as well. Where we do have some problems is like tree trimming and things like that. You lose some flexibility. Obviously, you get what you pay for, and if you're trying to get services cheap, you get cheap services. And if you want to have, a tree branch falls, we have to call the contractor to come out and do that. There's extra costs with it overall. So there is a bit of a trade-off in terms of service levels, but I think in general across the board, we've continued to provide high-quality services to our community during that time.
And once these decisions are made, they pretty much remain status quo. If you decide to contract out a service, that's probably going to be moving forward the way things are in any given city, not just Fountain Valley,
Sure.
because that's typically the trend. So this going forward will be how Fountain Valley operates with, as you said, fewer employees. And that's been a few years now too, with the fewer employees that you've had.
Right.
When were those reductions made?
Well, as I said earlier, we had, in 2002, we had 257 employees, so that was kind of the top. We've been dwindling down, and then really we started reducing staff significantly around 2007, 2008 as we entered the recession, just like everyone else. We had to tighten our belt and reduce staff. And we were able to contract some services, and then there's some things that we just don't do. Just some of the, like I was saying earlier, tree trimming, things like that. We can't be out at somebody's house every day doing certain things that we've done, not picking up things like we were before. We just don't have the resources.
And that brings us to today. And still, the financial challenges you face and tough decisions to be made. So at this point, what is Fountain Valley looking at to, again, maintain a healthy budget?
Well, we're at a point where we've had some reserves and we've been able to draw from those reserves, but unfortunately those will be depleted soon. And if we don't make some significant adjustments, because we really tried to reduce services without impacting the residents, we tried to reduce our costs without impacting the residents, but we're at a point where any further reductions are going to be very significant. The kinds of things that we're going to have to do to be able to balance our budget to fill that deficit and not run out of cash is we're going to have to do things like close a fire station. We only have 2 fire stations in town. If we close one of those stations, right now we enjoy about a 5-minute response time when there's a call for service, but we would likely have to close a fire station. That could save about $1.5 million by closing a fire station. We have a fairly robust recreation community services program that provides services to seniors, to youth, and that type of thing. And as most cities, we're about 50% cost recovery. We have a very nice senior center that provides great service to our area, but we may have to close that senior center if we're not able to fill that budget gap in some fashion. We could raise fees, but it almost becomes like a private club because a number of those seniors are on fixed income and they can't really afford to pay $1,000 a year to participate in those kinds of activities. So they're pretty significant cuts that we're going to have to make to balance the budget.
You did mention the city has reserves, and well, reserves for a city, compare that to a household. Is that just your savings account?
Well, we have about $30 million in reserves, and people point at that and say use that money. Unfortunately, over half of that is restricted. It was collected from developer fees. It has some connection to different types of funding sources that are very restricted in the type of use. We only have about $14.5 million that's available for use, if you will. Because our revenue is so heavily driven on property tax comes to the city twice a year, just like you pay your property tax bill twice a year. So we need that about $9 million. We've identified about 22% of our budget, but we need about $9 million per year to have in the bank to be able to cover that cash flow that period of time to half the year. So if you take that $9 million out of the 14, we really only have about $5 million that are true reserves that we can use. And with our deficit of 1.7 and growing to 4 million, you can see that's not going to last very long until we're out of cash.
Well, if you can't just dip into those reserves and try to stay afloat until better times, what are the other alternatives? You're a bedroom community, so you don't have South Coast Plaza as or the Harbor Boulevard of cars like next door has in Costa Mesa. You don't have the tourism dollars that next door in Huntington Beach does. As a bedroom community, what do you have and what are your options for raising revenue?
Sure. Well, we are somewhat limited. You know, we really only generate revenue through what I say 3 ways: through fees for services, and we can't charge more than the service costs. So we can't charge more in one particular area and then use the money someplace else. So fees for services through cost recovery, taxes, any sort of taxes, or development. And let me talk a little bit about taxes. If you have, you know, property tax, there's always the alternative of some sort of a parcel tax. Sales tax is another one that could obviously be considered. We have a few hotels in town. We generate about $1 million in hotel bed tax each year. We could consider that, increasing those types of things. So it's very difficult. The other challenge for Fountain Valley is we are working on a project right now. It's called Fountain Valley Crossings, that would increase the development in certain areas. But we have heard from the community there is a desire to not overly build our community. The intensification or higher density type of activities are not something the community is real excited about right now. There are some communities that have had the opportunity to, what I'll say, build their way out of this challenge, this financial challenge. We're built out community. We have very little dirt left, so anything we do is redevelopment, and it would have to intensify the use of those properties, and that's something that the community in general has expressed concerns regarding.
Across the board, tough decisions need to be made. The biggest part of the budget, public safety, am I right?
Correct.
So when looking at police and fire, incredibly necessary services, are there any alternatives there, including outsourcing?
Sure.
Because other cities have looked to either combine resources or instead of having an independent fire department or police department, looking at the county sheriffs or county fire authority. Has Fountain Valley looked in that direction?
We have. As a matter of fact, when I first started in Fountain Valley, I've been there for a little over 3 years, and when I first started, I was asked by the council to take a look at approaching Huntington Beach about the possibility of sharing services or kind of merging, similar to what Brea and Fullerton did. Unfortunately, Fountain Valley is a very lean operation. Fortunately or unfortunately, we're a very lean operation. And we only have 3 command staff. We have 3 battalion chiefs, one of which serves as the fire chief. The Brea Fullerton model, they had 5 different people that they were able to eliminate and then continue to provide those services. Unfortunately, because of the spread between Huntington Beach and Fountain Valley, the belief was we needed to keep those 3 battalion chiefs, so there was really no savings. It was, you know, under $100,000 to do that. We even looked at potentially having an ambulance service, but because of our relationship with CARE, we do get some money back from them. There was no real advantage to taking a look at that. As far as the police department, we've also looked at the possibility of contracting with the sheriff. Unfortunately, the sheriff's deputies make about $1,000 or a little more per month than our officers do. So just by the sheer nature of the way that it works, we're going to end up costing more. You look at different agencies, and that's what happens, is they're able to maybe save a little bit of money up front, but you lose control. Same thing with going back to fire. People say, well, what about Orange County Fire Authority? You turn over all your resources, and we would have to pay a fee, and every year they just send you a bill. Orange County Fire Authority pays quite a bit more than we do, so you know, again, their costs are going to be higher in the long run. So it's a challenge for us.
We have just 30 seconds left, and
Sure.
we've been talking about some pretty profound challenges and decisions to be made that won't be easy as a community. Just a quick word. Are still hopeful about the future?
Oh, I'm absolutely optimistic. I have to tell you, Fountain Valley is an incredible community. The community people that are involved in the activities, I call them the community patriots. They're second to none. They're very, very involved in the community. I'm confident that we're going to get through this. It's just going to take everybody working together.
Well, Bob, I believe that you'll take that direction for your community. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives with us.
Great.
We've been talking with Bob Hall, Fountain Valley City Manager, and we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be back with more after this.
Do you have diabetes? Join the movement to stop diabetes as a Red Strider at the American Diabetes Association's Step Out Walk to Fight Diabetes. Join hundreds of walkers who share your passion and showcase the courage it takes to live and thrive with diabetes. Gather your friends, family, and coworkers to walk with you and raise funds to help change the future of diabetes. Sign up today at diabetes.org/redstrider. Together, we can stop diabetes, one step at a time.
My wife's drinking really made things difficult for me. I'd come home from work to find the house was a mess and the kids hadn't done their homework. No matter how hard I tried, things just wouldn't get better. I didn't think it was fair that I had to work so hard just to keep everything normal. I knew if she could just quit drinking, things would be okay. In the meantime, I avoided family and friends because I didn't want to deal with the questions they would ask. My EAP counselor at work sent me to Al-Anon family groups. I didn't think I needed to go to any meetings at this point, but it turned out to be great advice. Listening to Al-Anon members talk about their lives helped me see a different way of looking at things. I never imagined I would be as calm as I am now. Are you troubled by someone's drinking? You might be surprised at what you could learn in an Al-Anon family group meeting from people just like you. Call 1-888-4-AL-ANON or visit alanonfamilygroups.org.
And welcome back to CityWorks. I'm Valerie Starn. Joining us now is Stephen Parker, Administrative Services Director for the City of Stanton. Welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here.
We're glad to have you. Transparency has been a buzzword now in local government for a few years, and especially in the City of Stanton, where you had something a bit controversial come about in the last election, and that was raising taxes. Tell us about why that measure was on the ballot and the fact that it was approved, what that said about your city.
Yeah, raising taxes isn't something that anyone wants to do. The city of Stanton had been through a number of years. We had 7 consecutive years of structural deficit, and we're dipping into reserves and frankly running out of money. In that time, the city cut a number of positions. A third of the workforce had to make a number of cuts to the police department, and removed a ladder truck and replaced it with a paramedic van with the fire authority. And at the end of the day, we were still almost $2 million in the hole year over year. So what City Council did is they took the pulse of the city, and they went out to the neighborhood, found out what the priorities were for residents. And residents said that they wanted public safety and they didn't want to see it cut any further. As a result of that, Council created a Blue Ribbon Commission and said, well, what can we do to make sure that we don't have to make future cuts? And the results of that commission was a recommendation to put a sales tax measure on the ballot. A sales tax measure has some benefits over other taxes in that the residents aren't hit the hardest. The tax is a shared tax with those that are coming through the city. And with Beach Boulevard being a big part of what the city of Stanton is, there's a lot of vehicles that go through and help share in that tax. In addition, low-income residents don't feel the hit nearly as hard because groceries and drugs aren't included in a sales tax. So Council felt like it was an opportunity to have the least negative impact on the residents, but still do what needs to be done, and that's raise enough money to make sure that you don't have to cut public safety going forward. And
has that happened since this measure was passed?
Yes, it's been a wonderful thing. So the city was facing a hole of over $2 million a year. The taxes raised $3.5 million a year, so covered that deficit. And with the excess reserves, the City Council has approved a number of increased positions, 2 additional deputies for Orange County Sheriff's Department, funding crossing guards for our local schools to help keep the kids safe, hiring a weekend code enforcement officer to make sure that graffiti and blight is not ignored over the weekend, things like that. Even though public safety costs are still rising, City of Stanton is now in our 2nd consecutive year of having a structurally balanced budget and putting money into reserves.
All of this very good news for the city, but the concept of transparency, could you have done this had you not been as open as you've been with your residents?
Residents demand transparency more now than they have in the past, which is a great thing. The city of Stanton has always prided itself on transparency, putting budgets and comprehensive annual financial reports on the website, but those are really complicated, hard to understand. Trying to take it to another level is something that the city council asked for in our 2015 strategic plan. They said, let's improve the website and find better ways, making it more transparent for our residents to see what the city is doing with their tax money.
Understanding any budget, much less the budget of a local government, a city government, would be difficult for anyone who doesn't have a financial background, who isn't an accountant. It's looking at a sheet of numbers. So how do you take a sheet of numbers and help the public understand what you're trying to accomplish for the good of the city?
Yes, I wouldn't be able to do it myself. Governmental accounting is very complicated, much more so than even corporate accounting. There's different funds, pockets of money that are used for particular things. It's really complex.
More restrictions because you're a government agency.
Absolutely, you can't use certain pots of money for certain functions. What the city found in order to solve that dilemma was partnering with a company, a website called opengov.com. And what OpenGov does is allow the city to export all of our financial information into onto their server, and then they consolidate that and make it a lot easier to see for the residents. So they make charts and graphs. You can toggle between years and compare years. One of the best things about it, in my opinion, is that you can create a saved view. So you hear a frequently asked question from the public. You ask that question and have the answer in chart or graph form already for the residents, so they don't have to try to dig deep and figure it out on their own.
For example, what would be a question this website has made much easier for you to be able to get the information to the public? What would be a question that would come to you?
Well, in the past, we recently opened Stanton Central Park. We're very proud of this new park. It was opened just this past June. And one of the things that we had heard from the public is, well, you shouldn't have spent our hard-earned money on this park. We would have rather it gone to police services. And one of the things that OpenGov shows is that all of the funding from the park came from restricted sources, money that couldn't be used for police services, for instance, but had to be used for things such as a capital project and the new Stanton Central Park.
When you say restricted, if somebody had a question, well, who's putting the restrictions? Did somebody at City Hall decide the money was restricted? Why does money need to be spent in certain ways for a city?
There are various different funding sources. So gas tax, for instance, when you pay at the pump for gasoline, you have to, the money from the state restricts that it be used for streets. In Stanton Central Park's case, we had a grant for a park. We had bond money that was set aside for a park, and we had in lieu money. Developers building residents have to help with parks, and this capital money was restricted for that as well. So all these monies could only be used for something such as a park, rather than free reign for anything other services that the city provides.
To your knowledge, does OpenGov.com provide services to other cities? I've just reading the local news, Stanton, I believe, was among the first cities to use this website.
Yes, one of the first, but even though the company is only 4 years old, they already have quite a few cities and counties. A number of Orange County cities are already on board with them, and I'm sure with the demands of the public these days, there will be more that are coming on even soon.
Again, back to that buzzword transparency. People want access. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that so much of anything that you want to research is available online, and so should to city government. What kind of a challenge would it have been to your staff to create a website like that, to put it in this organized fashion for the average resident?
Yes, the 30 employees in Stanton have a lot of things that they're doing full time. We definitely wouldn't have had the resources to put something on like this ourselves. And we're happy for a very nominal amount of money to be able to provide that transparency to our public, who have the opportunity to ask questions on the website. that then staff can respond to. It's a great opportunity.
What sorts of questions do you get?
Well, so far the questions that I've received have been in public. City Council goes out and conducts neighborhood meetings 1 or 2 times a month in order to make sure that residents who aren't able to make it into City Hall for a council meeting still have access to council members and are able to share their needs. Most of the questions that I've had pertain to our new 1-cent sales tax and making sure that the funding, the spending of that money is going for the purposes of what it was intended to.
And how has that helped you in your job, having this as a resource? It obviously, again, if it were up to your city staff to have created such an efficient website, that would have been difficult. You probably would have had to outsource and create a website team. So how has this allowed you to serve the residents better?
Well, by taking a lot less time on a project like that I have no expertise in, it's able to focus our time on making sure that we're running the city in a fiscally appropriate and transparent way, and not wasting the taxpayers' dollars.
Do you find that residents are still able to take the features of the website and, as clear as they are, it's still a complicated issue. So as clear as they are, is there anything more that you could see, the features that you would like to add in the future? As
much as the public requests items, we will absolutely pursue to see if there's something we can do. Those saved views can be adjusted at any time based on feedback that we get from the community. But the best way I think that the city is attempting to make sure that this information is going out to the public is through those neighborhood meetings, talk on the block, going in the front porch of one of our residents, or meeting in a condominium complex, and being available, making all the department heads available to answer any questions that they might have.
So the department heads attend those meetings, those community meetings?
Absolutely. Our police and fire chief and every department head, as well as city manager and council members.
And those are conducted twice a month?
Once or twice a month, depending on the month, yeah.
How would residents find out more about that? I mean, if they had a request to, say, come to a particular block or a particular neighborhood, are they allowed to request?
Absolutely.
Get on the meeting map?
Yes, and that's exactly what it is. We do take requests. When one is coming in their neighborhood, they'll see A-frame signs with the meeting date upcoming, and of course the website is our best way to disseminate information to the public. So we have a list of upcoming meetings on the website. We also have a brochure that goes out 3 times a year where we'll identify meetings in.
So you've attended a few.
Quite a few.
What's the feeling? I mean, I imagine there are some tough questions, but the general feeling of a city reaching out to city government reaching out to a community in that way.
Yeah, I don't think most of our residents realize how rare it is that a council would be so willing to be transparent and go to them and face whatever questions they might have. Each meeting is a little different. There's a different vibe. There's different concerns. It's amazing. Stanton's only a 3.1 square mile city, yet there are a plethora of different needs. So each neighborhood has its own feeling. The great situation is we're allowed to hear what the needs are and then address them. We take down notes on every single question asked, and if it wasn't addressed by one of the department heads at that point, then we make sure that it gets handled and a result completed, and that information gets back to the neighborhood.
Sounds like a great program and satisfying for your job as well. All right, well, thank you. Stephen Parker, Administrative Services Director for the City of Stanton. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode of CityWorks. For more information about anything we've talked about on the show today, please visit your city's website. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.